about different terms like observational studies, experimental studies in our previous webinar. So Dr. Anish will actually talk about what these different study methodologies are and will give us some better insight into it. I would just quickly like to introduce CNF and Meraki activities before I give the platform to Fida. So I request everybody to please mute yourself and turn on your camera so you can post your questions in the chat and will be covered at the end of the session. So Community Nutrition Forum, Meraki is basically the brainchild of Community Nutrition Forum. Ma'am, is the slide moving, ma'am? Ma'am, mute on do. Okay. It's still not moving, is it? Okay, ma'am. So Community Nutrition Forum Vision and Mission. So it basically tries to talk, educate, and counsel on the rights of healthcare practices with evidence-based scientific information. It has a mission where we visualize a healthy, disease-free younger generation leading to a healthy life, and prevention practices to reduce, not just to reduce the disease burden, but also to build better economy on healthcare sectors. And we envision to empower our fraternity through academic and research-based skill development programs. So the ongoing activities of community nutrition are towards community education. So we conduct classes in schools, colleges, like Nutrition Month, Diabetes Day, and Cancer Week, and give them nutritional awareness. Our social media handlings post authenticated and scientific information to the general public. And we also occasionally and regularly write on magazines, televisions, and radio where we speak about authenticated scientific information. So another activities from CNF side is Deputation. Deputation is a monthly webinar where we talk about different topics. Its research wing is currently writing and presenting different scientific papers and working on the focus of RSSDI 50. CNF also is conducting and running low FODMAP diet courses and has a tie-up with Monash University, which also provides a huge discount of 71% since the first batch that commenced in July 2020. These are the founding members of Meraki: Mrs. Sharon Thomas, Dr. Sripriya Shaji, Jyoti James, Sonia, and Uma Kalyani. The ethical committee consists of Dr. Leena Saju, Dr. Mumtaz Khalid, Dr. Rashmi Pujara, and Ms. Sharon Thomas. The research committee consists of Jyoti James, Dr. Manju P. George, Sindhu S., and Sripriya Shaji. And Team Meraki consists of Ms. Ansa Saju, myself, Fatima, Fida, Tanishma, and we also have another member, Ms. Swati Lakshmi Venu. I request Fida, one of the core members of Meraki, to give the introduction to Dr. Anish.
Good evening, all. With great pleasure and deep admiration that we gather here today to extend a warm welcome to Dr. T.S. Anish, an accomplished Associate Professor of Community Medicine and a distinguished epidemiologist. With his expertise in infectious disease epidemiology and his invaluable contributions to public health, Dr. Anish has earned widespread recognition and respect in his field. Dr. Anish holds the esteemed position of Associate Professor at Government Medical College Manjeri, affiliated to Kerala University of Health Sciences. His extensive research portfolio, boasting over 60 publications in esteemed national and international peer-reviewed journals, showcases his dedication to advancing our understanding of infectious diseases. With over 600 citations, his work has made a significant impact on scientific community and beyond. In addition to his academic achievements, Dr. Anish serves as a public health consultant on deputation with Kerala State Disaster Management Authority. His roles involve providing vital expertise and guidance in health-related emergencies, particularly during natural disasters and ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Anish's commitment to public health and his invaluable advice has been instrumental in mitigating the impact of these crises on our society. Dr. Anish's academic journey is adorned with exceptional qualifications. He holds an MBBS degree and an MD in community medicine from prestigious Government Medical College, Thiruvananthapuram. Furthermore, he has a postgraduate diploma in public health from the same institute. Driven by a passion for a comprehensive understanding of health systems, he obtained postgraduate diploma in health economics, healthcare financing, and policy from esteemed Public Health Foundation of India, New Delhi. Collaborating with prominent organizations such as WHO, ICMR, and State Board of Medical Research, Dr. Anish has been involved in numerous research projects on epidemiology of emerging infectious diseases. These collaborations underscore his dedication to tackling global health challenges and finding innovative solutions. Dr. Anish's influence extends beyond academia. He respected writer and an orator in Malayalam language. He has effectively disseminated public health related information to a wide audience. Through his engaging speeches and writings, Dr. Anish has become a trusted source of health education, empowering individuals to make informed decisions about well-being. Recognizing his outstanding contributions, Dr. Anish was honored with prestigious Sardarilal Memorial Award for the best research publications in the Indian Journal of Sexually Transmitted Diseases and AIDS in year 2012. This accolade a testament to his relentless pursuit of excellence and his commitment to addressing critical health issues. Today, as we warmly welcome Dr. T.S. Anish, let us express our gratitude for his invaluable contributions to public health, his exceptional research endeavors, and his unwavering dedication to the well-being of our society. We eagerly anticipate the knowledge and wisdom he will share with us as we work together to build a healthier future. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice words. At the outset, I would like to thank Sri Priya Madam for inviting me to this gathering. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me try to share my slides once again. If I will succeed, it will be nice, I think.
We can see your screen, sir.
Okay, thank you. This is the thank you slide. Okay, no issues.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope that it is visible now.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah, thank you. So now we are going to discuss about the importance of epidemiological study designs in your work, basically. So it is a talk on epidemiological study designs, and you can think that how you can incorporate these things to your studies. That is basically maybe nutritional epidemiology and all other things. So the lecture is not on nutritional epidemiology, rather it is based on the research designs that we use in epidemiology. So sometimes you may wonder what is a design. Design is a structure by which a study is conducted. So it is just like you are making a design of your home. You may be familiar with the Vastu, that we usually use in Kerala or in other parts of India, that how a house should be built and what should be the structure of a house. So that there will be some science behind that. Some people argue that there is some science. Some people argue that there is no science. But most often people use a system so that we can adopt these things and we can manipulate it slightly. And sometimes it may be useful. So that is basically what a design is. That means while you are trying to address a scientific issue, address a problem in community, for example, a nutritional problem, Just like, for example, what are the risk factors of severe acute malnutrition? Or what are the micronutrients present in the Indian diet or something like that. Then to address this question, you have to conduct a scientific study. And if you want to conduct a scientific study, the study should have a design or a structure by which you can move. So today we are going to discuss what are the common popular designs or structures that we use in epidemiological studies. So that is what is a design is. I am actually skipping these slides because to save time, because we have got only 1 hour or so. So basically, designs or a study or a scientific inquiry is usually based on two approaches. One approach is known as, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I think your slide is not moving. It's on the first slide itself.
Okay.
Now I can see the deduction, induction.
I think it may be slow. Maybe slow.
Okay.
Is it fine now? Is it the
yes, sir.
induction and reduction that you are seeing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So these are the two approaches. These are the two approaches that we use in science. One is induction and second one is deduction. What is meant by induction? Induction means based on observation, you are putting forward a theory. That means the theory is based on observation, tangible, objective observations. Then only you can call it a science. For example, if you are seeing that a child who is taking only kanji or only rice porridge every day is going to suffer from maybe some micronutrient deficiency in future. You are seeing that the child is taking only kanji every day. And maybe after 6 months or 1 year, you are seeing that the child has got a micronutrient deficiency, for example, a vitamin A deficiency. So this is the approach of an induction. That means you are observing something and you are putting forward a theory. Now you have got a theory that taking only cereal meals every day, completely cereal meals, avoiding maybe green leaf vegetables and maybe food contain animal food may happen micronutrient deficiencies. So that is known as induction. Basically, induction means only this much. Induction means we have got our observation, and based on observation, we will put forward a theory. You can see tremendous number of examples from the physical world for induction. For example, Isaac Newton was putting forward a theory. That theory is known as theory of gravitation. And it is based on his observations that everything is falling to earth. So you have got interesting stories. And Isaac Newton was sitting on a bench and an apple was falling on his head or something like that. So this is the approach of induction. Now also we are using a lot of things, a lot of theories are coming from induction. For example, sometimes you might have heard that myocardial infarction, that is heart attack, that is uncommon in ladies, especially in menstruating females. But it is very much common among males. Or a middle-aged man is highly prone for a heart attack, but a middle-aged woman is not. And that is actually an observation. But now we have got a theory that the middle-aged woman, just maybe before menopause, she has got a maybe higher amount of estrogen in her body, and estrogen may be protecting her from heart attack. That is again an induction, a theory putting forward based on some observations. So second approach is deduction. Deduction means you have got a theory at your hand that might have coming from some inductive approach, definitely, but you have got a theory now, and now you have to test the theory, whether it is right or wrong. That is deduction. That also we use in medicine. Medicine is usually more we use deductive approaches in medicine. So if I am taking an example from your area, the vitamin A deficiency is leading to bite out spots, for example. So you are seeing a lot of children with vitamin A deficiency, and you are seeing that in some of these children, the child has got bite or spot. So that is based on inductive approach. Now I am testing it. Okay, if bite or spot is related to the vitamin A deficiency, a child with a bite or spot, if she or he is given vitamin A, then it should be cleared. So I am actually conducting an experiment to see whether my theory is right or wrong. So that is known as deduction. I am not going into detail, but just keep it in your mind that in science we have got two approaches. One is induction and deduction. Induction means your importance is in observing things, and theory will come at last. At the end of your study, you will put forward a theory. Deduction means you have got a theory maybe at the outset itself, and the entire study is about testing the theory and to see whether your theory is right or wrong, whether you want to reject the theory or you want to accept that theory. So that is deductive approach. These are the two approaches. Usually we will discuss study design based on, or maybe at the context of this particular theoretical or philosophical approach. Study designs are basically divided into two. Sometimes you may say that it is descriptive studies and analytical studies. Descriptive studies are basically inductive studies. Analytical studies are basically deductive studies. If you are using induction as a philosophy, then the study will be descriptive. And if you are using deduction as a philosophy, then the study will be analytical. It is not that much complicated. It is actually very simple. Suppose you are studying only a single phenomenon. For example, a child is coming to you and the child has got obesity, or the child has got some nutritional issue. For example, Indian childhood cirrhosis. I am using the example of Indian childhood cirrhosis because I use this thing in somewhere in the presentation. Suppose a child is coming to a dietitian and the child has got some problem presenting with jaundice, and sometimes there will be liver enlargement, and you are diagnosing, or the physician is diagnosing it as Indian childhood cirrhosis, and the child is sending to you. I am sure that you might have heard about Indian childhood cirrhosis. Indian childhood cirrhosis is actually a very, very interesting entity that in India, especially in ancient India, if you just look at the number of studies published, you can see that the studies about Indian childhood cirrhosis were published maybe 2 or 3 decades before. So when India was suffering from starvation, or the extent of poverty was very high, in families, the male children, especially the first-born boys, were considered as special. And they were fed more compared to the girls or the other, maybe their younger siblings. So this particular child may be fed with much milk, and often milk is given in pots of copper. Then the child may be getting a chronic poisoning with copper. So the copper will get accumulated in the liver, and the child may develop a liver disease, very similar to a liver disease that is happening to an alcoholic man, that is cirrhosis. So this is known as Indian childhood cirrhosis. So suppose the physician is sending the child to you to assess his nutritional status and his food patterns and all. Here you do not have a theory. You have got only observations. So there is only one child is there, and you can analyze whatever things, and you can say that what is the frequency that the child is fed with milk, whether the milk was given in copper pot or not. So many things you can just study from that child. And sometimes you can say that it is Indian childhood cirrhosis, and it is the problem is because the child was fed in copper vessels very frequently. So that is a descriptive study. Why it is a descriptive study? Because you have got only one child, and based on observation, you are putting forward the theory. If you are not able to remember this much, you just remember that if there is only one case is with you, then your approach will be inductive and the study design will be descriptive. Similarly, if you have got one group of children, for example, so many children, you are actually working in an area, maybe in a remote area of India, and you are presented with so many, a group of children with Indian childhood cirrhosis, then also it is descriptive. How we can differentiate between descriptive and analytical is, in analytical studies, there will be more than one groups. Usually, there will be two groups. Because if you want to test a hypothesis, whether if you are interested to check whether a theory is right or wrong, it could only possible by comparison. Without comparison, you cannot put just refute or just accept a theory. For example, suppose there is a theory. For example, smoking will lead to lung cancer. If you have got a group of smokers, and if you are seeing that out of the 100 smokers, 10 developed lung cancer, you cannot prove that smoking is leading to lung cancer. Suppose there are 100 non-smokers are also there, and among smokers, 10 developed lung cancer, but in non-smokers, only 2 is developing lung cancer, or only 1 is developing lung cancer, then only you can say that it is smoking may be associated to lung cancer. The theory that smoking is related to lung cancer is right or wrong could be refuted or could be supported only by comparison with non-smokers. Otherwise, sometimes you may be bluffed or sometimes you may be wrong. So if your intention is to check a theory right or wrong, you should have a comparison. That is the learning point. Without comparison, if you are just telling that a theory is right or wrong, sometimes you will be fooled. I will just give you an example, then you will understand. A forensic surgeon, I am using examples from medicine, and I think most of you may also be familiar with so many medical examples. And I am using medical examples because basically I am a doctor. So think about a forensic surgeon, and she has got a theory that alcoholism is leading to road traffic accidents, death. People are dying in roads because of alcohol. At least a part of people are dying on road because of alcohol. So she was conducting a study. She selected 100 individuals died because of road traffic accident, and she conducted some postmortem examination, and she analyzed what are the food materials present in her stomach or in their stomach. And surprisingly, she found that only 20% of them had alcohol in their stomach, but 70% of them had rice in their stomach. Then what was the responsible? What was the risk factor for accident? Was it rice or alcohol? So it's a very interesting question. 100 people died because of alcohol with this accident. Only 20 had alcohol in their stomach, but 70 had rice. And if sometimes she may come to a conclusion that alcohol is not a big issue because it was there only in 20%, but rice is a big issue because it was there in 70%. But you know that it is wrong. Why she is wrong? Because she was trying to prove a theory in a descriptive study. That is only one group. If her intention was to prove or disprove a theory, she should have used an analytical approach. That means a comparative approach. That means she may be taking 100 individuals died in road traffic accident compared to 100 individuals died in hospitals, maybe because of some other reasons, maybe because of old age, or maybe because of something else. And then she should realize that in road traffic accident, 70% of them had rice in their stomach, but in another group also, somewhere around 70% of them had rice in their stomach, because rice is a staple food of people. And in the road traffic accident, you will see that 20% of people are suffering from or were taking alcohol, But in other group, it is only 5%. So the thing is in the difference, not in the absolute amount. So I hope that you understood it, the difference. So descriptive study means basically if you are not able to follow whatever things I have said, you just keep it in your mind that descriptive study means you are studying a patient, a person, or a group of patients. You are not comparing them at all. Analytical study means you have got two groups or sometimes more than two groups, and your interest is to compare these groups. Comparison means you have got a theory. Comparison means you have got a theory. Then otherwise, why you want to compare? You are comparing because you think that one is better than the other or one is different from the other. So a comparative study will be analytical and a non-comparative study will be descriptive. Most of the studies sometimes will be having a descriptive part as well as a analytical part. Another way of comparing or differentiating study designs are observational studies and experimental studies. It is based on the role of the investigator. If the I am not more, are you able to see the slide descriptive versus analytical?
Yes, sir.
I am not actually moving the slide. I am actually keeping only the slide only. Okay. So the second type of differentiation is observational studies and experimental studies. Observational study means the investigator or the person who is conducting the study is observing things. He's not or she is not intervening in the things at all. She is not doing anything. Okay. You are a dietitian. You are interested to see what the food materials are having by obese individuals. Now you have got 100 obese individuals in your hand and you are just checking what are the food materials they are taking. So that is an observational study. You have got only one group of obese, so that is a descriptive study also. Now you have got two groups. One is obese individual and second one is non-obese individual, and you are comparing the dietary pattern of obese individuals and non-obese individuals. Then you will realize that what make people obese. Obese individuals may be taking more burgers, sometimes more calories or sometimes more sugars. Sometimes their family history of obesity will be high. And non-obese individuals may be taking more vegetables. And sometimes they may be taking more fruit. Sometimes they may go for exercise. A lot of things will be there. So now it is a comparative study. Then that is an analytical study. But in both approaches, the role of investigator is observing. She is not doing anything at all. So this is observational studies. That is another way of just looking at it. Experimental study means the role of investigator is she is doing something. Maybe, for example, a trial. For example, I want to check whether adding green leafy vegetables in diet of school children will have a stake on hemoglobin. So now I have got a group of children and their hemoglobin status is known now, but I am now introducing green leafy vegetables every day and I am seeing what is happening to their hemoglobin. That is an experimental study where the investigator is doing something to change the natural things. So that is experimental and observational. While you are studying about epidemiological designs, you have to be very clear about these four terms. That is why I am taking more time to explain this. Descriptive means one group. Analytical means comparative. Observational means the investigator is not doing anything rather than observing the matter. Experimental means the investigator is intervening in the natural things or something to happen. Okay. These are the basic designs that sometimes you may study case study or case report where there is only one case is there. Sometimes you may be dealing with a case series. That means you have got more than one case. And another design is a cross-sectional study. That means you are studying a population. A population means a group of people. You are identifying with a setting, that is a population. For example, people residing in Malappuram district is a population, or maybe children studying in particular school is a population, or people coming to a hospital is a population. Sometimes the population will be definite, sometimes the population will be indefinite. There is so many things about the population and all. I am not going into detail. If you are interested in a population, then that is a cross-sectional study. And you, for example, just like I am repeating the examples, if I have got one child with obesity, that is a case study. And now I am interested in many children. And because there are in schools, there are many children with obesity. And if one child, if I am studying only one child, I may not be able to capture the entire detail. So I have got 50 children with obesity in my hand, and I am analyzing this 50, then it is a case series. Now somebody asks, okay, in schools, the percentage of obesity is increasing. This percentage is known as prevalence. So prevalence of obesity is increasing in our school children. So you have to conduct a study to see what is the prevalence of obesity among school children. So I am selecting some schools, supposing from a district, using some sampling technique. I identify maybe 10 schools, and I am enrolling 500 children, and I identify that 100 children are obese. That means 20% of children are obese. Then that is known as a cross-sectional study. So these three designs, you have to be very clear. Cross-sectional study. Now we have got another three design, very commonly used. Case control study is a design that is an analytical study. Analytical means comparative study. Case study, case series, cross-section, there is no need of comparison. But from case control onwards, it is comparative designs, that means analytical designs, and you have got some hypothesis or some theory. So I think why the children are become obese. Sometimes their dietary pattern may be unhealthy. So that may be the reason. So now I have got a hypothesis that the children suffering from obesity may be having a dietary pattern that is towards the unhealthy side. That means more fats and sugars may be consumed compared to a children with a normal weight. So now I can compare. That means I have got two groups. In one group, there are 100 children with obesity. They are known as my cases. And in another group, I have got 100 children without obesity. That are my controls. Now I am checking the dietary pattern of both the groups and what are the food materials consumed by the case group more than that of control. That may be the food materials making the children obese. And what are the food materials consumed by the control group more than the case group. That may be the food materials protecting the children from becoming obese. So this is a case control approach. That means people with outcome are compared with people without outcome to study what are the exposure factors that was leading to the outcome, whatever may be the outcome. In the study, outcome is our obesity. Second approach is cohort. Cohort is also an analytical study. Again, you have got two groups, but the difference between case control and cohort is, in case control, you have got two groups, people with outcome and people without outcome. In cohort also, you have got two groups, but here it is not the people with outcome or people without outcome. It is the people with exposure and people without exposure. In our hypothesis, our outcome is obesity. Our exposure is unhealthy diet. Okay? Obese people are compared with the non-obese people. That means people with outcome is compared with people without outcome. Then that will be a case control approach. But if you are comparing children, they are not obese, but children who are having unhealthy food habits in one group and healthy food habit in another group, and you are following them to see whether children consuming unhealthy food are becoming more obese compared to the children not consuming unhealthy food. So that is a cohort. And while you are just looking at it, you can see that cohort has got more ethical concerns. Because if you are seeing that some children are consuming unhealthy food materials, that is your duty to correct them. You cannot actually follow them. Sometimes following them may be unethical. In the history of medical research, so many unethical practices were there in cohort. One example is Tuskegee syphilis study. Sometimes you might have heard about Tuskegee syphilis study. When this Bill Clinton was the US President apologized the entire nation for conducting that kind of a study. That was a cohort study. In this cohort, people were followed. People with the syphilis were followed. Okay, usually in a cohort study, there will be a follow-up because people with exposure are followed. Here, the syphilis was the exposure, and these people were followed. And President Clinton apologized because that was unethical. It is not unethical to follow people with syphilis, but the problem is, after the start of follow-up, a new drug was invented that was penicillin. Penicillin was highly efficacious against syphilis, and because of the study, people or doctors denied penicillin for these people who were studied. So sometimes the cohort may be having an ethical issue. Sometimes there may not be ethical issue at all. For example, I want to study what are the dietary advantages of breast milk, or maybe comprehensive or maybe complete exclusive breastfeeding. So I have got 500 children fed exclusively breastfed, maybe for 6 months, and they form the exposed group or exposed cohort. And I am comparing them with another group of children where their mother failed to breastfeed completely for 6 months. So I have got two groups. Now I can compare. I can just follow them maybe till their 15th year. I can study their educational performance, what is happening to your body weight, what is happening to their mental status, and so many things I can study. So that is a cohort approach. So I hope that you are getting my point. The difference between case control and cohort. In case control, people with outcome are compared with the people without outcome. In cohort, people with exposure are compared with people without exposure. Sometimes in a cohort, there will be only one group will be there. People with exposure will be there. For example, children completely breastfed. I don't have a comparison group at all. Then also that will be known as a cohort, but the design is not analytical because only one group is there. So it is known as a descriptive cohort, sometimes a uni-arm cohort or something like that. So many nitty-gritties are there in the designs. I am not going into that kind of a detail because we may be able to discuss these things further sometimes in another lecture. So the design is RCT. Sometimes you might have heard about a RCT. RCT is otherwise known as randomized controlled trials. Randomized controlled trial means here a group is taken and a group is enrolled, and we are making them into two groups. Maybe that is known as a random process. We are making them into two groups, and in one group you are doing something, and in another group you are not doing something. That is known as a randomized controlled trial. For example, suppose some people argue that spirulina is something wonderful food or something like that. If you consume some amount of spirulina, for example, 25 grams of spirulina every day, it will be enhance your health, such anything. Suppose you have got a hypothesis. One thing that you can do is you take 500 individuals and make them into two groups randomly. There is some process by which you can make them randomly, divide them randomly. That means 250 in one group, another 250 in another group. And you are giving spirulina in one group, and you are not giving spirulina in another group, and you are checking them, what is happening to the group given spirulina compared to the other group. It is just like it is similar to a cohort. But here the problem is the exposure is done, or the exposure is initiated by the investigator herself. That is a difference. And the exposed group is similar to unexposed group because there is a randomization process. From one group, randomly you are picking and giving spirulina. That means these two groups are comparable except in whether they are given spirulina or not. But the problem is the other cohort, sometimes the group may not be comparable. For example, children given exclusive breastfed, sometimes their mothers may be healthy. Sometimes they are maybe having very wide, maybe birth gap between their siblings. The other group may be more poor. Sometimes their mother may not be, maybe having some health issues. Sometimes their mother may not be aware of the benefit of breastfeeding. The group who is receiving breastfeeding may be becoming better not because of breastfeeding, but maybe because of some other reason, that their mother is maybe healthy. Sometimes they may be coming from well-off families, we do not know. But in RCT, that kind of an issue is there, because these two groups are formed from a single group by a random process. So these are the major designs that we usually use in epidemiological studies. So this is known as an evidence pyramid. You are arranging different types of studies, and if you are conducting, if some results are coming from randomized controlled studies or systematic reviews. Systematic reviews means you are analyzing many studies. Systematic reviews and meta-analysis are known as studies of studies. Okay, suppose from a single area, for example, one researcher found out that spirulina is good. Another researcher conducted a study and the result is spirulina is not good. Suppose there are 50 studies are there. Some studies argue that it is good and some studies argue that it is not good. Then you can conduct a study among the 50 studies and you can see whether actually it is good or bad. That is known as a systematic review and meta-analysis. And randomized controlled studies and systematic reviews and meta-analysis are placed at the top level of an evidence pyramid. That means if there are some results are coming from these kinds of designs, that is considered as maybe a better result, or the result, you can be confident on the result. So similarly, cohort studies, case control studies are also kept in the above the top part of the ladder. So these studies are giving you maybe a reasonable results, or sometimes you can depend on that particular result. And we have got another science by which you can evaluate the result based on the type of studies and all. And I am not going to that kind of details. Here, you look at this one. This is actually a sentence I have taken from a published literature. We present the case of a 13-month-old girl presenting acute jaundice, fever, and persistently. Yeah. It may take some time. I think my system is not very fast. That may be the reason that it is not changed. It may come. Okay. Okay. Is it coming? No. Okay. Actually, it is a sentence. I am reading that sentence. We present the case of a 13-month-old girl presenting acutely with jaundice, fever, and persistently increasing bilirubin. That is a hello, കേൾക്കാലോ? Okay. That a child is coming with jaundice and she has got fever and bilirubin is increasing. This is only one child. That means this is a case study. A case study will look like this. If you are able to provide more data on that, a case study means you are analyzing a single case in depth to study a particular phenomenon. Here the phenomenon is Indian childhood cirrhosis. And now, just in a sentence, you can see that jaundice, fever, and bilirubin, increase in bilirubin, are clinical features of Indian childhood cirrhosis. It is only a single sentence. But there will be very detailed description about this particular case. That is a case study. That means you are describing or using a single case to study a phenomenon. Here the phenomenon is Indian childhood cirrhosis. And you are maybe using a single child. So, is it the slide is changing?
Yes, sir. Now we can see the code, sir.
Yeah, and I have actually changed it to the next slide. So I think we are one slide behind. The slide is moving one slide behind. Okay, here now I am showing the particular study that is published. You can also search and you can find out that there is a case like that. Really, it is a published case. The title is, I will read the title, Indian Childhood Cirrhosis, Down but Not Out. കുറഞ്ഞു പക്ഷേ പൂർണ്ണമായിട്ടും ഇല്ലാതായിട്ടില്ല. A report of a rare case with practical clinico-pathological diagnostic approach. It is the name of the title. Here, the researchers are describing the features of Indian childhood cirrhosis using a single child. That is an example of a case study. Similarly, you can see so many case studies in literature. I am opting Indian childhood cirrhosis because it is something related to your area. So again, you can see many studies. Again, I am just, you can see the slide, I think, maybe after 2 or 3 minutes. So I am showing different studies. Indian childhood cirrhosis, like disease in a Japanese boy undergoing liver transplantation. That is one case report. Another case report is late manifestation of Indian childhood cirrhosis in 3-year-old German girl. Okay, so many studies you can see that. These are known as case studies. Case studies are only thing that you have to remember that a particular phenomenon of interest, scientific interest, is explained using a single case. That is a type of research where you are reporting only single case. Then the only thing is that report should initiate some responses. So otherwise, suppose a child is coming to you, the child has got diarrhea, and you are reporting the features of this diarrhea, nobody is going to publish. But if a child is happened to be in front of you as a dietitian, and if the child is suffering from Indian childhood cirrhosis, and if you are able to provide a report, detailed report, the journals will publish that. That is a research because people are interested to know more about the features of Indian childhood cirrhosis because it may be very important. For example, now there is there is iron fortification of rice that is happening. Suppose as a dietitian, you want to show what are the benefits of iron fortified rice, and you have got 100 children consuming iron fortified rice, and you demonstrate what happened to their hemoglobin value. Sometimes that may be useful. So that is a case series. That is not a case study because you are using 100 children. Similarly, I don't know whether you are able to see my slide. Now I am showing another example. Here I will read. Australian gynecologist Dr. McBride of Sydney suspected that thalidomide was cause of limb and bowel malformation in 3 children he had seen at Crown Street Women's Hospital in 1956. This is a very important, dramatic study actually. There is only 3 children. Here the problem is, the problem is this particular gynecologist was just checking children, and he was seeing that the children has got severe limb abnormalities. കയ്യും കാലും ഒന്നുമില്ല കുട്ടികൾക്ക്. So when he was investigating, he found that their mothers consumed a medicine that is known as thalidomide. At that point of time, thalidomide was a medication given to hyperemesis gravidarum. You may be knowing what is hyperemesis gravidarum. അതായത് ഗർഭിണികളായിട്ടുള്ള സ്ത്രീകൾക്ക് they may not be able to consume food because of their pregnancy, and they may be vomiting extensively. So some doctors used to prescribe in 1950s a drug which was known as thalidomide, and later it was banned because of these kinds of researches. And doctors found that the thalidomide is responsible for the severe problems in children. So again, this is known as a case series, only 3 children. So sometimes you can have very dramatic studies can be conducted. using maybe one case or sometimes very few cases. And another approach is a cross-sectional approach. And here the problem is the slide is not moving. That means sometimes you have to see my slides maybe later. And you just listen what I am saying, and you may look the slides maybe after 5 minutes. Here I am trying to describe what is a cross-sectional study that I have already described. That the cross-sectional study means you are studying something present in a particular population. For example, the prevalence of micronutrient deficiencies. So recently I was part of a study which was conducted in 10 cities of India. It was organized by King George Medical University, Lucknow. It is based on the prevalence of micronutrient deficiencies among school children. And Trivandrum was one of the 10 cities, and I was the principal investigator from Trivandrum. So this is a cross-sectional study. I want to study what amount of children, what is the pattern or what is the percentage of children in our community suffering from micronutrient deficiencies. If you are going to assess that kind of a pattern, that is known as a cross-sectional study. Here we will just check or we will study the prevalence. Prevalence means number of persons with a particular problem divided by total number of people in a community. You can just multiply it with 100 or 1000 or whatever it may be. Okay. And another design is a longitudinal study. That means there is a follow-up, very similar to a cross-sectional study, but there is a follow-up. So we have actually discussed about a cohort. I was discussing about Tuskegee syphilis study. All these things are usually a longitudinal approach. That means I have got 100 people with the syphilis and I am following them. If I am taking a cross-section or a snapshot, what is happening to, what is the presence or the prevalence of micronutrient deficiency among our children, that is a cross-section study. And whether I want to study, okay, our children are consuming so much calories. They are not consuming green leafy vegetables at all. And I am following them to see how much of people developing micronutrient deficiency because of their dietary pattern. That is a longitudinal study. That means it is moving in time. It is a longitudinal study. In longitudinal study, what you are getting is incidence. So these two terms are very important in epidemiology, incidence and prevalence. Prevalence means, okay, prevalence is a state. Incidence is usually events. If you want to measure events, that is incidence. If you want to measure state, that is prevalence. Sometimes, suppose I do not know how many of you are attending this particular lecture in Google Meet. Suppose there are 50 people are attending this one, and suppose 20 of you are not listening at all, then the prevalence of not listening is 20 divided by 50, or 20 is the prevalence. Or if you just make it to percentage, it is 40%. 40% is the prevalence of non-attending. What is incidence means, now you are attending, but as the lecture progresses, you are getting bored and you stop attending. So that is incidence. Incidence will be obtained in a longitudinal study and prevalence will be obtained in a cross-sectional study. These are the basic things. So descriptive studies that we have already discussed, and I will just go or make you familiarize some of the analytical designs. So I won't go detail because we don't have time. Case control study, we discussed. I will again repeat. In case control study, cohort study, and in a trial. In these three designs, you have got two groups. Sometimes there will be more than two groups also, but usually two groups. How these two groups are selected is the importance. If the two groups are selected based on an outcome, it is case control. If it is selected based on exposure, it is cohort. If the exposure is created by the investigator, then it is a trial. Okay, this is a very important thing, simple thing that you have to remember. Okay, Suppose I am saying that, okay, uh, taking green leafy vegetables every day or consuming fish every day. Consuming fish every day will protect you from cardiovascular diseases. That is my theory. Now, this thing could be addressed in three different ways. One thing is, I will have two groups. People suffering from heart attack is one group, and people not suffered from heart attack, maybe past the age but not suffered from heart attack, is my controls. And I am checking whether what is the difference in fish intake in these two groups. And I am finding that people did not suffer heart attack, consumed fishes in a larger quantity compared to people developed heart attack. So that here the difference is people developed heart attack and people not developed heart attack. This is a case control approach. So this same question I can address in another way. People consuming fish regularly is my first group. People not consuming fish regularly is my control. And I am following them to see whether the fish intake or heart attack is more or less in the people consuming fish. And I found that in people consuming fish, the rate of heart attack is lower compared to people not consuming fish. That is a cohort approach. To conduct this study, it will take more time. It will be difficult for me to conduct these kinds of study. The other thing is very easy for me. So case control studies are usually very easy, but cohort studies are difficult. But sometimes cohort studies will be easy. Suppose you have got a registry, the government is keeping a registry of people consuming fish regularly and people not consuming fish regularly from 1950 onwards, then I can very easily compare these two groups. Then that will be very easy. Otherwise, the cohort study will be difficult. Then how can do a trial here? I will select a group of people, for example, 1,000 people. They are not consuming fish now, but I will just make them into two groups randomly so that the other one group is not different from the other, or the two groups are comparable. And I am giving fish to the first group and I am not giving the fish to the second group. In dietary things, it will be very difficult because what you have to eat is your choice. But in drug trials, it is possible. Suppose this is possible in diet also, then it is known as a trial. So these are the three designs that you have to think. So this is a case control that we know. I am not going to detail. I can share your slides. I have already sent to Sri Priya madam, and if somebody is interested, you can get my slides and you can go through the slides and then you will realize, okay, what is happening. And if you have got some doubts, you can just ask me later. So here I am just giving you an example of vanaspati as a risk factor of myocardial infarction. വനസ്പതി കൂടുതൽ കഴിച്ചാൽ ഹാർട്ട് അറ്റാക്ക് വരുമോ എന്ന് ചെക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പല മാർഗങ്ങളുണ്ട്. ഒന്ന് ഹാർട്ട് അറ്റാക്ക്, യു കമ്പയർ പീപ്പിൾ വിത്ത് ഹാർട്ട് അറ്റാക്ക് ആൻഡ് പീപ്പിൾ വിത്തൗട്ട് ഹാർട്ട് അറ്റാക്ക് ആൻഡ് ചെക്ക് ദെയർ വനസ്പതി ഇൻടേക്ക്. And if vanaspati is a risk factor for heart attack, people with heart attack might have consumed more vanaspati than people without heart attack. Second option is a cohort study. That means people consuming vanaspati is compared with the people not consuming vanaspati, and you can see their cholesterol level or sometimes the development of heart attack. This is another approach. The third approach is you select some people and you give vanaspati to them. That is a trial, but you cannot give vanaspati to them because a trial has got some issues. A trial could be done only for positive outcomes. For negative outcome, you cannot conduct a trial. That is an ethical issue. Suppose smoking, you know that smoking may cause lung cancer. You cannot give cigarette for a study. But if you consume or if you think that mangoes are going to protect you from some problem, you can give mangoes, no issues. Only for positive outcome, you can intervene. That is the problem with a trial. So this is a very basic thing. And again, as we have already discussed, if you have got some doubts, you can ask. I have discussed about case control, cohort, and trials. And randomized controlled trials. Okay, then some people may think that, okay, is there a comparison group is required or not? There is a very famous study or famous criticism about the Horlicks study. So these people, Horlicks, Complan, and all these people are conducting many studies, and they are arguing that their product is good. And sometimes they will bluff you also. And there was a very notorious study conducted by Horlicks once. It's actually a very ancient study. They were conducting a study, and sometimes you might have heard about the advertisement of Horlicks. And they argue that the Horlicks will make you taller, stronger, and sharper. So one argument is the children consuming Horlicks will become taller, or they will regain height. That was one argument. So what these people were doing, that they were identifying children from slums of Indian cities. And the children were given Horlicks. And they document that there is a very fast growth in children who consumed Horlicks. And they argued that Horlicks is a wonderful nutrient supplement. I am just mentioning Horlicks not because it is, if you can think whatever health drink that is in your mind could be applicable for this, not only Horlicks. And they can argue that this is a supplement that is very good because you can see that it is a research finding that you can see that the children are growing like anything. So this was published also. And they are arguing that this particular health drink is very much good for health. But the problem is, if a child in slum or children in slums means they are not getting enough food. If you are giving Horlicks, the Horlicks will be acting as a food. Okay, suppose you are not giving Horlicks, but you are just giving them kanji and payar. Then also they will grow because there is an immense potential for growth because they are not growing because they don't have food. If you can provide food, they will grow. That no matter Horlicks, Complan, milk, or whatever it may be, they will grow because they are not growing because they don't have food. So you are assuming that what happened because of food, you are thinking that it is because of Horlicks. But if you want to say that it is because of Horlicks or Horlicks is going to maybe an additional advantage, give you an additional advantage in height, then the comparative group will be normal food. If you have got 100 children or 200 children, 100 children were given normal food and 100 children were given Horlicks. And if you can document that Horlicks has got an advantage, then only you can prove or you can argue that Horlicks is a good health drink. Here the problem is, without a comparison group, sometimes people can bluff you. Just a single group, you just give Horlicks, the people will grow and you can see that it is because of Horlicks. But it is not because of Horlicks, but it is because of food. So these kinds of issues are there. So to account that, you should have a control group. Okay, whenever you are going for an analytical study, especially a trial, definitely you should have a control group. Sometimes you might have heard about placebo effect. Placebo effect means in medicine it is very, very popular, or it is a known phenomenon that a person, suppose you are very much confident in your doctor, sometimes the doctor may not be giving an active component. Sometimes the doctor may give a very passive medicine. Sometimes the doctor may give a vitamin tablet for your headache, and your headache will be gone because your confidence on the doctor will work. So there also a comparison group should be there. Otherwise, people will think that a vitamin tablet is good for maybe your headache. So these kinds of things are there. So a comparison group is essential for an analytical study. That is one aspect of a trial. And my aim of this particular lecture is to familiarize you on these particular designs that I have discussed, that is case study, case series, cross-sectional approaches, case control, cohort, and trials. And I think we can stop now because it will take a long time for me to discuss all the aspects of the designs. And sometimes you may be able to find more time because I think our time, or if you have got time, I can maybe spare some more time. No issues from my side. But I think
Sir, how
just
much
paused somewhere
time do you
around.
will require? Just so that the participants can know.
I think we can spare some time for discussion so that it will be beneficial. Now I have
Okay, sir.
now I have given you the outset or maybe a framework by which you can think about epidemiological design. But now I think we can go for a discussion so that we can discuss maybe for another 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I think
Okay, sir.
if that is fine for you.
Yeah, sir. Anything is okay, sir. Even if you have something important, we can discuss that and then we can open for the discussions. Okay, ma'am. Shall I read out the questions for you, sir?
Yeah, please.
So one of the question is, are all comparative studies deductive?
It is based on the purpose of comparison. Usually all comparative studies are deductive. Usually all comparative studies are deductive. Sometimes in a single study, there will be induction will be there, deduction will also be there. For example, I want to study the prevalence of diabetes in a group, or I want to study the prevalence of obesity among school children. So I am conducting the study and I found that 25% of our school children are obese. That is an inductive approach. Only one group is there, that is our school children. But here now I have got an opportunity to compare the 25% of children who are prone to be or proved to be obese to the other 75%. They are not obese. At this juncture, the design is changing to an analytical fashion that where I am comparing obese children with non-obese children to check whether there is an impact on the dietary pattern or whether the obese children were consuming more fatty food compared to that. So that part is analytical. If your comparison is to just check whether one group is different from the other, then all comparative studies are deductive. Usually all comparative studies are deductive.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So the next question is, would laboratory-based studies be more beneficial or field-based studies?
That depends. It will depending upon what is your objective. Usually field-based studies are more pragmatic. Pragmatic means in laboratory, you cannot see the real details of implications. But to start with, you can start in laboratory. But if you want to apply, which one is better? Iron folic acid tablet or this one, your green leafy vegetables. Iron folic acid tablet or green leafy vegetables, which one is better to tackle anemia? So if you are conducting it is in a lab, almost like a laboratory study. Maybe you are feeding children with iron folic acid tablet. The other group you are feeding children with green leafy vegetables. And in third group you are feeding children with maybe chicken. And sometimes that three group of children will feed the respective ingredients in a laboratory. But at the moment you are freeing them to the field, The children consuming iron folic acid tablet may not consuming it at all. Children consuming green leafy vegetables, if you are able to motivate, sometimes some children will consume. But the children consuming chicken, sometimes they will consume with taste or sometimes with maybe some more interest. And at the end of 6 months, you will see that children consuming chicken is suffering from less anemia compared to children taking or expected to take iron folic acid tablet. In laboratory, these three things were working, but in field, only chicken may be working in case of children. So these kinds of things would be there. So if you are addressing the same question in laboratory and in field-based studies are much better because it will give you an actual practical things. But some studies you can conduct only in laboratory. Sometimes you have to conduct the study in laboratory first, then only you can conduct to field. So we cannot say that laboratory studies are inferior to field-based study. But for a single question, which one is laboratory or field is better, definitely field may be better.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, how can we address ethical issues in cohort or case control studies?
Okay. In a case control study, usually there may not be large ethical issues at all. Actually, okay, this is one of the major advantage of a case control study, that there is no major ethical issue. Because why the ethical issue is, we do not know whether the outcome is good or bad. Because of the exposure, if the outcome is becoming bad, then it is not ethical to expose. If the exposure is giving you the bad outcome, it is not ethical to expose. That is the ethical issue. But in a case control study, the outcome is already happened. And you are comparing people with outcome and people without outcome. That means, so there is no much ethical issue in a case control study. There is no much ethical issue. Sometimes there will be some issues in conducting the study. Sometimes there will be some issue in asking question. For example, I am conducting a case control study to see what are the risk factors of HIV infection. So my cases are people with HIV, and I am asking the girl or the lady how you develop the HIV. Sometimes that question may be embarrassing for her. So there are some ethical issues like that. Otherwise, there is no much ethical issue in a case control study. In a cohort study, the ethical issues are something between a trial and maybe a case control study. For example, smoking is leading to lung cancer. I am making them into two groups, smokers and non-smokers. Then there is an ethical dilemma that is it my primary role to tell the smokers to quit smoke? Okay, that is ethical issue there. But there is some maybe one thing I can be safeguard. That means it is not my decision that whether the person is smoking or not. It is her decision or his decision. So it is I am not responsible for her smoking, but I could tell that to stop smoking. So that is the ethical dilemma in a cohort study, but there is no big issue because it is not my choice whether the person is exposed to a harmful exposure. But trial, really, there is ethics is a very important thing in a trial because in a trial, you are responsible for the exposure. A dietitian is conducting a trial. What does that mean? The dietitian is giving a food. If the food is going to make some food poisoning among your clients, that means you are doing something very unethical. It is not the client's choice. It is your choice that the person has to consume that. Then you have to double check that the food is likely to benefit. You cannot say that the food is going to benefit. Otherwise, there is no scope for a trial. You are conducting the trial to check whether the food is going to make benefit for the person or not. But you have to prepare the food so that it likely to benefit. You have got some points, or you should have some evidence that the food made by you is not going to harm the patient. So that is a very important thing. So how can you make more ethical means you have to check scientific studies before conducting. Okay, just by, for example, you are one fine morning, a dietitian is feeling that maybe drinking so much buttermilk is good for cholesterol, and she can, or the patient can stop the medicine for cholesterol. We cannot do that, because if the patient is stopping medication for cholesterol, sometimes he develop a heart attack, even if they are consuming buttermilk. So you have to check whether buttermilk is going to lower cholesterol. What is the studies in literature? You have to collect all these studies. Then you have to check whether the drug could be stopped, or is it better to keep the drug. മരുന്ന് കൂടെ കഴിച്ചോട്ടെ, അതിൻ്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ ബട്ടർമിൽക്ക് കൂടെ ആകാമല്ലോ. അങ്ങനെ എല്ലാം നോക്കി വളരെ സയന്റിഫിക് ആയിട്ട് പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്തിട്ട് മാത്രമേ ട്രയൽ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. Okay, it is not based on something that is in your mind. There should be strong evidence for something to be tried. That is by which you can make ethical choices. But there are so many ethical guidelines while conducting a study. There is a lot of things. In India, we are following ICMR guideline to conduct studies, and there are many guidelines to look into the ethical issues in trials.
Thank you, sir. I had a follow-up to that. So would you say that a quasi-experimental trial is more prone to bias, or will actually be more ethical, especially if you know that the agent is going to benefit somebody?
Yeah, sometimes, that you have got a point there. Quasi-experimental designs are two types. Either you don't have a control at all. That is one thing. That means you have got an intervention arm only. That is a quasi-experimental design. Second one is sometimes there will be two arms, but that is not randomized. That means one group, for example, personally I like to drink buttermilk, so I am given buttermilk. Other group, they don't like buttermilk, they are not given buttermilk. So my choice is also taken into. So that is not a very clearly randomized group. Rather than a common group is there. There are people who like buttermilk and who don't like buttermilk. You are conducting a trial by just accepting their choice. So in a quasi-experimental design, definitely the chance of bias will be more, because sometimes there may not be a control. Sometimes the control may not be representative, or control may not be similar to the exposure group. Two groups may be different in many aspects. So bias will be more, but ethical issues sometimes will be much less. Because if your trial, if your exposure is going to benefit these people, you can give the benefit to the entire group of people. In a regular trial, sometimes the benefit may be denied to 50% of people. And in the second example, you are considering their choice. So the ethical issues will be lower for a quasi-experimental design, but bias will be more. And a compare in research angle, in evidence angle, an evidence generated from an RCT is considered as much superior than evidence generated by a quasi-experimental design.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So the next question is, a retrospective cohort study. What are the challenges in data collection, and how can we avoid bias?
Okay. In the context of bias, a case control study, bias is much less in a trial, especially in a randomized control trial, because the randomization process will make these two groups are comparable. The only difference between the two groups is the intervention. So whatever outcome is happening may be because of the intervention. That is the importance of a RCT. So among all designs, RCT may be having very low amount of bias. Case control studies will be having very high amount of bias. Your cohort will be somewhere in between, because cohort in a case control study, the very big amount of bias, because case control is not according to the natural history of events. In a regular day-to-day activity, exposure will come first. You smoke, then only you will develop lung cancer. But in case control, you start your study from lung cancer, That means sometimes you might have forgotten about your smoking status and smoking history at all. Sometimes you may not remember it at all. How many cigarettes you were smoked in 20 years before, you may not be remembering it at all. So a retrospective study may be having that kind of a bias. In a cohort, usual cohort will be a concurrent cohort or a prospective cohort. So there may not be large amount of bias because you are moving with the patient. Whenever the patient is smoking, you are making an account of that. You are just in a diary, you are just writing something. So there will not be that much amount of bias. But the question is about retrospective cohort. What is meant by a retrospective cohort? Retrospective cohort is also a cohort. That means your study start from exposure and it is ending to the outcome. But the exposure and outcome is already happened. And somebody who has recorded the exposure and somebody has recorded the outcome also. That means it is a record-based study. Usually retrospective cohort studies are record-based studies where how much data was recorded is a very important thing. Okay, in Europe, maybe in Scandinavian countries, in some countries where the data collection is pakka perfect, all these things will be recorded and sometimes there may not be bias. But in India, we don't record usual things. Very minimal things will be recorded and it is very difficult for us to study a records-based retrospective cohort. That is one aspect of that. And still it may be more biased compared to a concurrent cohort or a prospective cohort because the recorded data will be much inferior to the data that is taken by the researcher herself. So these problems could be there. In India, it is very difficult to conduct a record-based retrospective cohort. In India, the only thing possible for you is to just follow the patient and do something prospectively.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, due to the time constraints, I would consider that as the last question. If any of the audience have any question, shall we direct it to you later on?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to invite Tanishma to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ansa. So, distinguished guests, dear team members and participants, thank you all for joining us in today's webinar on nutritional epidemiology, and we are truly grateful for your presence and participation. The webinar, led by our esteemed speaker, Dr. T.S. Anish sir, shed light on the vital role of nutritional epidemiology in understanding the link between nutrition and health. This knowledge is crucial in training professionals and ultimately contributing to the well-being of the individuals and communities. We extend our appreciation to Dr. T.S. Anish sir for sharing his expertise, passion, and valuable insight with us. Special thanks to our organizing team for their efforts in making this event successful. Lastly, thank you all participants for your active engagement and thoughtful contributions. So let's continue exploring and apply the knowledge gained to positively impact socially. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Thank you all.
Thank you.